Welcome to Sci-Fi Book Trek. Today we'll be reviewing The Andromeda Strain by Micheal Crichton. So, what was your initial thoughts on it?
I like it. I've always been a fan of Crichton's work, I've got to admit, but he's a very technical writer.
To some extent, yes. I would say he likes to put a lot of technical things in his work, but I would say his writing is still accessible.
Whatever you're actually reading, there is an explanation behind it.
Yeah.
It at least tries to go into some of the research, some of the ideas and theories behind the...
He backs up everything he's saying.
Not necessarily correctly.
But, I mean, the one criticism, slight criticism I would have, is the premise for, framing around this book. Is it sort of a secret military report? And though in aspects it feels like that, especially when it's referring to this is a specific document or something, and it shows a document.
Yes.
The actual writing, I feel that is quickly forgotten about this is a technical report, because it does feel like a engrossing story. Just, well written, and it doesn't read like a technical document.
It's not that it's a technical document in that way. It's more that other writers, or at least in my experience, other writers will try and sort of set up themes, try and set up overarching ideas for the story, whereas Crichton's writing, it tends to be he'll start with a what if idea, and then he'll go from there and create a dramatic scenario, but then it feels like he's gotten it feels like he's going for a technical problem that then the drama fits around, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, weirdly enough, Andy Weir's Martian. That, well, I suppose Andy Weir is more sort of based off Andy Weir's a version of Crichton rather than Crichton's version of Andy Weir in that respect. But
so the technology and the idea drive the plot more than the drama or characters.
Yes, because for me, the characters, they don't come across apart from maybe two, and that would be Stone and Hall.
Right.
Because the others kind of blend into the background for me. Maybe the only other one that I would say has got that's engaging would be Peter Jackson, the old man in the town.
Well, I mean, let's go into characters then, because there's at least, I would say, 4 main characters and maybe one standout minor character, or maybe a major character, but yeah.
Well, like I say, you've got hang on.
You've got Jeremy Stone.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the initial scientist, you mean?
I would say he comes off as the de facto leader of the project.
Yes, and he is, because he's one of the people who set it up.
But it's not just that he's the de facto leader of the project, he's almost the de facto leader of the group.
Yeah.
In terms of, okay, yeah, he runs the whole show, but he's also got the charisma to back up the actual guy that everyone goes to, even though I'd argue that there's like not equal responsibility, but sort of an equal
of authority.
Yeah, authorities.
Yeah, I would say the 2 out of the 4, the 2 people who are almost lead alike are probably Jeremy Stone and what is it? Peter Levitt.
Well, that's the thing. Levitt doesn't come across to me as
No, let's fully introduce all the characters. You got Peter Stone first.
Mhm.
He's a scientist and he's very methodical.
bacteriologist.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's a very much I don't want to say a plodding scientist, but he crosses the T's and dots the I's.
Mm.
He's very methodical.
And he's one of the lead scientists that identifies the problem
Yes.
that gets the Wildfire Project its funding in the first
Yes.
place.
Then there's probably what is it? Charles Burton. Burton. Sorry.
Yes.
Charles Burton.
I know why you've made that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a thing of a book. Charles Burton. That he's though still a scientist, he's almost the opposite. He's portrayed as the opposite of Stone. As in he tends to he's a bit slapdash with some of his research and experiments. But he tends to get ideas and fall into the right answers.
He's an innovator who gets very, very lucky.
Yes. That's how he's introduced. Then the next person who's introduced, Peter Levitt.
Yes. He's the clinical microbiologist.
Yes. He's the older gentleman in the group, though it comes across. And he's works as a researcher in a hospital. Though he's a senior doctor.
Yeah.
And he's the one who sort of brings Hall on board, you find out. And that's Mark Hall. He's the young surgeon.
Yes.
And he's a bit more impetuous and slightly more carefree. And also he's single,
which is a significant
plays an aspect in the book and why he's there. So I mean, over the other character, the other notable mention, Peter Jackson.
Yes.
That's because he did excellent work filming King Kong.
I was thinking you were going to go Lord of the Rings or
Brain Dead.
Brain Dead.
That's the best one. But no, Peter Jackson.
Yes.
Who, well, I won't spoil where he comes in, but he's a drunken old man.
Sterno-addicted, aspirin guzzling, geriatric, I believe is the description.
But he's a fun guy to be with. Let's leave it at that. And then there's no other characters in it. There's a few named people, like some of the generals and whatnot. But there's also a few people who appear at the start and then get taken out.
Yes.
The book. But yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's plenty of side characters. There's also a mention, weirdly enough, of a young lady. Well, I say young lady, a 51-year-old brunette who does the voices of all the computers, which I just thought
wasn't
a weird thing to refer to. Okay.
Yes, the only other sort of female character in it who isn't really in it.
Yes.
Yeah. That was interesting. It was like, fair enough, I guess.
But the voice of the computer is mentioned often enough that I thought that was
no. Yes. I mean, she's probably the most notable female character in it. Even though, Hall has a nurse, a female nurse with him.
Yes, it's like an aide that is assigned to him.
I'm not even sure she has a name, unfortunately. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up the characters involved. And though you learn enough about them, they are they're not really. It's not really a character journey. They are there to service the plot. Yeah, would you agree?
I'd agree.
Yeah. I mean, the other main thing is this takes place over 5 days, and
a considerable amount of that is them just trying to traverse the wildfire installation,
yes.
which is interesting.
Oh, yeah, so it's very interesting. I mean, even getting there and, like, some of the things they have to do, because they waste almost a day doing nothing
Mm.
before they get to Wildfire. So, but yeah, the Wildfire Institute is the place where the main book is set.
Yes.
It's an
It's
underground
kind of
place.
acts 2 and 3, would you say, of the book?
Yes.
Because part of the
I initially it starts off in a small town,
yes,
and then it goes over to the
the installation.
yeah.
Yes. So interestingly enough, Crichton was inspired to write this after after reading Ipcris File.
Yes. I've seen the TV version, but well, I mean not the TV, the film version, of course, but not the book. I've not read it, which is a British author, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Len Dayton.
It's interesting because that book's more about like spying, more about like Cold War spying and counter spying and stuff like that.
So not one we're likely to cover on the channel.
No, to be honest, I can't say because I haven't read the book. I'm only basing it on the film starring Michael Caine.
Yeah. Like I say, I don't have much experience with either of them, so that might be one that I'll have to check out.
I mean, it is a very good film.
I imagine it would be, because Michael Caine doing anything related to spying is quite.
Well, it's also like young Michael Caine, so he's very good.
So the basic plot of the book is that it's involving scientists investigating a crashed satellite, which then has potentially brought a dangerous pathogen into
Yes,
to Earth, and it's the fallout of having to deal with that situation. And so Stone identified this early on,
as a
and
possibility.
yeah, and he has specifically contacted the president by letter with a group of other scientists, and as a result of that, the Wildfire Project was founded based on his recommendations, and he was
A few years prior to the setting of the book.
yes.
Which was the setting in the book is 1969, I believe.
I mean, the book itself was published in 1969
Yes,
as well.
and all the technology involved is very age appropriate, shall I say. So if you're reading it now, you might think, well, this seems a bit dated.
Yeah.
As far as technology, but this is, I think it's going to feel like this could have actually happened. That's what Crichton was going for.
Yes.
Rather than making it slightly more, I wouldn't say far-fetched, but adding in futuristic bits or setting it in the near future. This is set in the future, in the current time it was written in.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting how much ASCII art he uses to describe certain elements and to give pictures, for instance, how a computer would process that, process pictures or process sensory input from a camera. using the technology of a 60s computer.
Yeah.
Which,
And like if you're used to sort of ASCII art and stuff like that, you'll find, oh yeah, that's what it would have been like. That's fine.
but it's
If
interesting
you're
that
not, it could strike you as rather odd and crude.
but it's interesting that there's rather a lot of pictures as well, like hand-drawn illustrations that
Yes.
presumably Crichton did, although I have no basis on that.
It does look like, it was at least created or printed out of, a doc matrix or something. Or some
No, I'm talking about
antiquated computer.
the hand-drawn stuff.
The
There's
hand,
some of the hand-drawn illustrations. Um, if I can find you one, something like that. I'll bounce this up on screen.
right, yes. Well, I don't know, I would say that's more of a scientific drawing or through a microscope, what you would.
Well, that one is an
Yeah,
electron microscope picture, or
I would. Yes, I would imagine it's a drawing a scientist would do from what they saw through electrical microscope, or trying to do a near image perfect of it.
yeah. But whether it's something that Crichton found and has then co-opted, or
Yeah,
whether he actually did the research, went to an electron microscope and used an electron microscope, and
which
then
for the time might have been extremely difficult, but well, just because of how expensive they were.
true.
But I mean,
That said,
yeah,
there are plenty of authors that, for research purposes, have
yes.
been able to get access to, high tech equipment.
Well, what do you think is the main themes and ideas of the book? Or like, what was the point of him? What was the main concept Michael Crichton was trying to get across?
I think it's similar to the concept that Stone was trying to get across in the book, in that its Earth has no sufficient defense from a pathogen of extraterrestrial origin, and it's all how to deal with that. I mean, there is a possibility that it's showing that there are themes of failure within the book. There's several points where procedures fail. There's several points where there's mechanical failures. There's several points of where the procedures are not adhered to. It's almost like a fallibility of humans in a system that is supposed to be, pretty watertight. But
Because I mean, for
that
me,
might even be a stretch. I've got to be honest.
I don't know. For me, that is the main idea. It's the fact that humans are essentially not perfect,
Mm,
and everyone's broken in slightly different ways, and everything we create is also broken in slightly different ways.
mm,
Stuff we can't predict, or we've just jumped to the wrong conclusion or the wrong assumption and put something in place which doesn't account for,
human
yeah,
fallibility.
or even machine or other fallibility.
Mm. I mean, that was me thinking at a stretch. I do have, the drama is driven by multiple points of failure
Yeah,
within these systems that are supposed to safeguard, you know, everyone. And some of those failures actually go to saving the plot,
yes,
or saving the day, so to speak. But yeah, that was me reaching. I've got to admit, I still think Crichton is very much he's created a what if scenario and simply drawn a story
yeah.
around that what if scenario.
But it doesn't.
Whether he was going for that theme of failure as
Mm,
a general thing is perhaps questionable, but
I don't know. I think he puts it there on purpose, just because when he's describing all the characters initially, he always gives them flaws,
Hmm.
which sometimes you find out later on, sometimes you find out immediately. Even Stone's got a flaw,
True.
but do I do like that about the book, because it's sort of suggesting it's okay. That failure is okay, because in the end, sometimes failure is a good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a bad thing, but you just got to carry on going.
And I like the progression of this show, isn't it?
I would say it is a good read. It is definitely worth reading.
Yes.
It does. I think the framing initially of it being like a report done after the incident, that tends to fall apart quickly.
Mm.
Though it has like framing at the start and framing at the end of sorts. When it gets into it, it's written more like a story than a report. Just for the fact it mentions like people smelling certain stuff, people, oh, this must have been the last thing he saw, or stuff like that. It seems a bit more lyrical and flowery for a report.
Mm.
But I understand why it's done, because otherwise it would be almost unreadable if it was done in a report form.
Yeah. It does set up a narrative framing in that, regardless of everything that happened, you do know that this is a post-operation wrap-up.
Yeah.
So I suppose in that respect, it does kind of set up that, well, everything did go okay, because obviously he's
Well,
sitting there giving a final report.
not necessarily, because that there's at least humans still alive.
Yeah, well, true.
Someone to give a report, you don't necessarily know what happened to the characters involved.
Mm.
So it is. It's an interesting framing device, and it is enjoyable.
Yes. I I have enjoyed
Mm.
rereading it. I mean, I've read it a couple of times before, previous to now, and I've got to admit, I enjoyed rereading it. I got quite into the story again. It's one of those
Mm.
ones that you won't be disappointed. You won't be disappointed if you pick it up again and again and again. There's always something.
I know. I mean, the first time I read it, some of the scientists came off as a bit of, I would say, cold and arrogant. But rereading it a second time, that wasn't a thing for me.
Hmm.
So I don't know what happened or what changed.
When's the first time you read it?
Uh, Probably teenage or early 20s.
Because it could be the change in practicality that as you've gotten older, you're starting to recognize the idea that, oh, that seems a bit cold when you were
Maybe.
20s. But then as you've gone through life, some of the decisions that the guy makes, certainly some of the decisions that Hall makes, are like,
Well, actually,
actually, that makes
it
good
wasn't.
sense.
Well, it was partially Hall, but it was more Levitt
Mm,
that I initially did not like for some reason. I reread it. I'm like, Levitt's fine. He's, I mean, yeah, he has a problem, but it's fine.
yeah. For me, the characters of Stone and Hall come across the most. Burton
Mm.
and Levitt tend to drift into the background for me. Levitt only really coming back because of the issue nearer the end of the book.
I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think you spend more time with Stone and Hall.
That's
just because Hall's interacting with Peter Jackson.
Yes.
And Stone is sort of, as you say, the de facto leader, and he's the one calling the shots.
And
like always speaking in the conferences and stuff.
Yes, and it's him that's giving the final report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's not him, mate. The final report, is it?
I thought it was.
No. Don't think it. You mean the person sort of writing the report?
Maybe I'm getting confused.
No, I don't. I think the person writing the report is a nameless individual who works on the government end. He was interviewing everyone.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was Stone.
I could be getting confused with the part at the start of the book when they're with the presidential letter.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably where I'm getting confused.
But yeah, because throughout the book there are inserts of letters, maps, and all sorts of diagrams and
paraphernalia.
Yeah. So, and also like secret codes and stuff.
I quite like that.
Yeah, I quite like that. But yeah, so throughout there's like dotted these things. But yeah, I mean, it was very easy to read. I mean, I didn't have any problem with the technical sides of anything. Having said that, I think some people might get lost with some things like the code they put in there, which they do explain how it all works. But you can quite easily gloss over that if you're not computer or mathematical.
Tech savvy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is old tech as well, but it's a very good story.
Yes, I agree. It's a very good story, and I think it will keep you gripped from start to finish.
I mean, they did make a film and they did make a mini-series out of this.
There's also a sequel.
Is there?
There is a sequel book.
Oh, written by who?
Written by Crichton.
Oh, Crichton.
It was published. It's the last book that was published after his death. It's called The Andromeda Evolution. It's not set in space.
Yeah.
It's set in the jungle. And this is the information that I've managed to glean.
Well, one day we might cover it.
Yeah.
Because I've never heard of it, but okay.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
But yes, the film, I think, is better than the mini-series.
Oh yes, but we'll discuss that in spoilers.
Yes.
Because I've seen the film multiple times.
I've seen the film, yeah.
I've read the synopsis of the mini-series.
Yeah.
And I'll let you know what I think about the synopsis in spoilers.
I think we've probably got similar views on that one. But yeah. Hopefully we haven't lost any of you again. So join us next week for the spoiler element of the Andromeda Strain.
I've got to suppress the giggle.
Yep.
It's just, I can see my face and I'm thinking, ooh, I want to punch that bastard. Now, I mean, it does say on the front cover, a thriller that shocked a generation.
Except it says shook. You want to run that again? There we go.